Hey everybody, how you doing? We have some movement as of the last 24 hours regarding Howard Terminal, although there's a lot of misinterpretation going on regarding what it means that the city released this brand new version of the term sheet. So I'm here to clean that up and move us forward in the proper way, and that's what I'm going to do with this live stream. That should only last a few minutes, comparatively speaking, with respect to my other live streams. But if you remember, on the 20th of July, the City of Oakland held a 6-hour meeting on a proposed term sheet. And a term sheet, for those of you who don't understand what a term sheet is, it's simply a list or a guideline or set of guidelines regarding which party will do what with respect to a development. And for example, a common term sheet will explain if the city is supposed to provide new streets and roads, where the developer is going to build its building or set of buildings, and what those dimensions are going to be, what the costs are going to be, if there's any cost sharing that's spelled out, and so on. It's a term sheet. In the City of Oakland development process, that term sheet generally leads to what's called a due diligence and development agreement, or DDA. That is a specific legal document that is approved by the Oakland City Council that binds the activities of all the parties, specifically city and developer, to the things they're supposed to do that they originally put on the term sheet. Okay, so when you get to this point, it means you're ready to write up your term sheet, have the city council vote on it, and then get started in gaining your financing for your project and identifying your materials and construction plan, and get on with building the buildings and clearing the infrastructure, improving the infrastructure so you can build the buildings so that you can have this thing done. That's the idea. So with that in mind, the city has released, hey Sean, how you doing? Great to see you, sir. Yeah, has released this right here, this document. City of Oakland approves term sheet for the Oakland waterfront ballpark district at Howard Terminal, right? And it reads as follows, and I will read it to you. It says that the Oakland City, it says that on July 20th, the City Council approved a non-binding term sheet outlining key terms to be included in a development agreement, as I explained before, between the City of Oakland and the Oakland A's for the waterfront ballpark district at Howard Terminal. Please read further for questions and answers about what this means. They have a FAQ, which I'm not going to go into, okay? What are the key terms included? Ballpark costs. This says what are the key terms included in the term sheet resolution. I think what this should be named is what are the key items of agreement, okay? These are the key items of agreement. So this needs to be rewritten. The key items of agreement are as follows. Ballpark costs. The A's will privately finance the construction, operation, and maintenance of the ballpark. That's number one. And that's no change. 2, on-site infrastructure. That's what happens right on the site. The A's will pay upfront costs of all on-site infrastructure, such as roads, sewer, water, and electrical lines, as well as affordable housing, parks, and open space. Now, that's a big deal. It means that the athletics have agreed to pay for the upfront costs for affordable housing. So encapsulated within this is a major win for the City of Oakland. They got the athletics to agree to pay for affordable housing. So that's news. And that should be noted here. In fact, I should tweet that out as such, that A's agree to affordable housing, and because that was a stickler, if you remember. That's no longer a stickler. That's no longer an issue. That's dead. That's dead. Okay. I don't know what turn of events came, but maybe they got logic and realized that, hey, this subsidy could help us, right? And maybe the city got logic and said, hey, we don't have to make them pay in the same way. Whatever the case, there are a lot of details in that devil back there that I'd love to see, and are, I believe, really worth seeing. And I'm by FYI, affordable housing. FYI, affordable housing is in, okay? And hashtag Oakland Athletics, like that. And then hashtag Howard Terminal. There, okay? So there, okay? So now I've got that out there, and let me go back to explaining this matter, all right? That's a big, or as the president would say, a big effing deal, all right? That's a big effing deal right there. I'm going to highlight that right now so that it is noted here that right here, again, on-site infrastructure. The A's will pay upfront costs of all on-site infrastructure such as roads, sewer, water, electrical lines, as well as affordable housing, parks, and open space. That's a big win. That's a big deal, okay? Infrastructure Financing District. This is the other one, okay? The city, Alameda County, if the board of supervisors decides to opt in, this is the next hurdle, will establish a single IFD covering only the Howard Terminal site. That's great. An IFD, as you know, is a financial tool for the city and county to invest their this is using this is announcing that they're using tax increment financing, okay? And it says up to 80% of the IFD proceeds be used to reimburse the A's for their upfront investment in on-site infrastructure. And the remaining 20% of the proceeds will be dedicated to implementing displacement prevention strategies off-site. You know, that 80-20 rule, I don't quite understand, because and I think really should be subject to review, because the project throw-off, tax increment throw-off, is $1,600,000,000, assuming a 4% rate of growth in assessed value over a 45-year period, and assuming, very simply, a $2 billion base year assessed value. That's the stadium or the ballpark, in plus enough ancillary building projects to equal a $2 billion base year assessed value, right? So if you have that, you're basically saying, hey, look, if I put a bond issue throw off for that is about $800 million. So basically you're saying right off the bat that you're going to give $600 million to the Athletics. And that's about right for what they need to pay for. But originally the costs for infrastructure, they had gotten down to $350 million. So they're actually giving the A's an additional $300 million, which is interesting. And they're only saving something like $200 million for community related costs, which also begs the question: have they costed out what the community benefits are expected to be, right, or listed? Have they provided a dollar price tag to those? It doesn't sound like they have yet. And the way they do these things, although it sounds like they've gotten religion, I still believe that and maybe that criticism has gotten to them. I certainly hope so, because that was the intent, for them to get their act together. But it seems, just looking at this straight away, that matter is still not resolved regarding the cost of the community, the total cost of the community benefits. Off-site infrastructure, off-site transportation infrastructure investment. The total project costs off-site transportation improvements is approximately $352 million. This infrastructure investment will catalyze long-needed improvements in the Jack London District, downtown, Chinatown, Old Oakland, and West Oakland, and facilitate the safe and efficient movement of people and goods around and to the waterfront. The A's will not be responsible for these costs, but will work actively with the city to pursue local, regional, state, federal, and other funds to cover those costs. Now, see, that infrastructure investment, and that's what I'm getting to regarding the increment, can be used to pay for that. And here's where I think the city really messed up in not negotiating with the taxing agencies straight away and saying, hey, look, we want that additional base, and we're going to take that additional base and then apply it to the project, which would give them a $2,600,000,000 revenue envelope rather than 1.6 billion, and increase their proceed capacity to roughly 1.1 billion. All right, that's a substantial difference. So they haven't gotten off that. That's disappointing. They've got enough time to do it, and why they're not doing it is a big head scratcher. But that said, this is major progress. Okay, let's continue. I was just talking about this. Okay, now I'm talking about vested rights right here. The A's will have vested rights, it reads, to develop the project as set forth in the development agreement and other project approvals for the full term of the development agreement. During this period, the city cannot limit, change, or delay the project or increase developer obligations. There are exceptions for public health and to implement new federal or state laws, building and fire codes, or city infrastructure standards. All right. The A's have vested rights in development, right, but there needs to be clearer language regarding A's as master developer versus sub-developers and their roles and responsibilities, just so the city understands it. Are they paying to the A's if there's a land turnover, and will the city claim transient occupants, real estate transfer taxes from that? As is its right, and will those real estate transfer taxes apply to the tax increment? Those are questions that need to be answered and ironed out. And really right now, because also there's been a lot of talk about this project costing $12 billion, right? But folks, I say this, I'm going to say this again, and I want you to regarde en face, which is French for look at my face, okay? The A's do not have and have not presented a cost that matches the build out, okay? In other words, each one of those buildings is an artist's rendition right now. There's no guarantee those buildings are actually going to be there over the course of history. That's a wish list. They have the land use spelled out, yes, but they do not have, and Dave Kaval has said this in his interviews with me, they do not have and do want a developer partner. So that needs to be ironed out. And there should be language in the agreement so that it is understood that the A's can seek a development partner and what that development partner's role might be. All right. Just again, so that no surprises, so that the costs and revenues associated with such relationships are understood, and the city doesn't feel like it's been rooked over, and next thing you know, someone's threatening to haul them back into court and all that stuff, talking about the A's, okay? That needs to be ironed out right now. All right, go back to here, okay? That gets the vested rights issue. Timing. The development agreement will have a term of 35 years. Construction on the ballpark must start by 2025 or no more than 4 years after any litigation is resolved, but in any event, no later than 2028. That's great. Now, that says construction on the ballpark, but again, it doesn't get to how the entire area should look. And this is what really drives me nuts regarding the way that you're doing this, okay? And this is what I absolutely rail against, folks, all right? If you want to achieve a project throw-off of $1,600,000,000 in assessed value over a 45-year period, assuming a rate of growth of assessed value of 4%. Remember, the county can increase that assessed value by 2% by Proposition 13 law annually. In fact, you know what it is in New York? Because I'm actually working on I'm taking a look at the Buffalo Bills Stadium project, but that's another story. But it's 6%, right? It's 6%. So they have a 6% inflation allowance. We've got a 2%. I'm like, oh boy, I thought we had it made. New York's got it golden. Anyway, 2%, the county can increase it, all right? So my point is that it doesn't take much to see a 4% increase in assessed value and drive the engine of tax increment financing to reach the $1,600,000,000 mark that I'm talking about over that 45-year period. And who's to say that the law might be changed so that there can be a 6% increase as opposed to what a 2% increase exists right now. Just saying, all right? Just saying, okay? So let's get back to here. I don't want to get too far away. All right. Timing needs to be worked out. This thing, timing. It's one thing to mention the ballpark, but they say nothing about the other buildings, nothing about the other development, nothing about what the relationship between a master developer and a sub-developer could yield on development partners. That needs to be worked out. Non-relocation agreement. The A's must remain in Oakland for 25 years from the date they play the first game in the new ballpark. If they leave, even after 25 years, they must cover outstanding debt service on any public debt associated with the project. Now, that debt service obviously refers to the only public debt that really matters is the tax increment. And the A's need to really, get that out of the way to make sure they can afford that. I know they say that they can and everything else, right? But they need to cost those out versus their ability to pay, or the city, and maybe the city should have this in writing, might wind up opening the Oakland Athletics. The port turning basin. This is something Mike Jacob, the attorney for the longshoremen, I think is quite interested in. I have to get his input on this. It says, in its agreement with the A's, the port has reserved certain portions of the project site for a potential future expansion of the inner harbor turning basin. If the port exercises those rights, the development agreement would terminate as to those lands reclaimed by the port. That's a fancy way of saying that, look, if this expansion of the inner harbor turning basin that the Pacific Maritime Association so badly wants does occur, then basically, guess what? The longshoremen essentially become part or a beneficiary of the Howard Terminal project, which I think is a wonderful thing. So this port turning basin addition is no small deal. I think it's a great addition to this. I hate to use that same word twice. Addition to this plan. Affordable housing. The project will target 35% affordability using on-site and off-site strategies. On-site, 15% of units will be affordable. Off-site, a $50 million fund will be established to implement strategies to prevent existing residents in the area from being displaced due to rising housing costs. The fund, the best way you do that basically is to make sure you're building more affordable housing around there, right? The fund will support a combination of newly constructed units, preserved units, renovated units, and down payment assistance targeting a total of 20% of the 3,000 on-site units or 600 units. The project will also provide anti-displacement tenant services in the 4 impacted neighborhoods. This is where the city can enact AB 434 and tie that business assistance program in with affordable housing one and identify live work, because people work out of their houses now, as a raison d'etre to create a new type of affordable housing, the affordable live work space. You know what I mean? The affordable live work space. And so the affordable live work space, okay? Jobs, all right? Jobs. The project is in Port of Oakland jurisdiction. The port's jobs policies will apply in lieu of the city's. Specifically, all project-related construction costs will be subject to the port's maritime aviation project labor agreement. For operational jobs, the port will require a operational jobs policy. So we're getting to now other areas that have less to do with land use, and apparently in the community fund. Here's the community fund. It says that the community fund will be established and maintained over the full 66-year life of the A's lease. And it will cover a number of revenue sources, including social justice fund. I really highly disagree with how this is done. This is sloppy. It acts as if there is this pay-as-you-go strategy where the money is trickling in from tax increment rather than a bond issue to pay for these costs upfront in terms of community benefits, and then move forward. But to have these things pay out over a 66-year period gets you into such problems as the present value knows how much money is it worth, how much is it worth in terms of money in the future, right? It's a wrong way to do this. People have to understand something. Assisting the community is not some sort of handout or giveaway. It's community development. You're developing the community. So treat it just like any other development. Design out what you want to develop, figure out what the costs are, and then use tax increment financing to design a bond issue with the proceeds so that they can be paid for. That can be done within this project. That is an extremely disappointing aspect of this. And it really shows to me that the city has really lost its ability to complete this big project like we used to be able to do. All right. This is a major step in total. It goes from a D grade, or really a D minus grade, to a B plus grade, but we need to get into A territory. And getting into A territory is done by showing intelligent use and understanding of tax increment financing. We still don't have a read at all of what they think. It's only in my spreadsheet. And folks, this math is universal, all right? My math is the same as everybody else's because the tax increment financing calculation is the same. And what is that? It's the base year minus, it's the current year minus the base year. You take that amount, that's your increment, multiply it times the tax rate. That's revenue one. You do the same thing year two, current year minus the base year of 2 years ago, that increment times the tax rate, that's revenue two, and so on and so on. You do that for 45 years, okay? I can do that in New York. I can do that anywhere. I can do that in Colorado, all right? There are a number of states that allow tax increment financing. This is not something that's native to and exclusive only to California, all right? My point is, the calculation is known. Just do it and show us what your throw-off is, and then show us that you've compared sources and uses. Because I think I haven't seen that the A's have made a statement about this, but I can imagine that publicly, first of all, two things are going on. The A's have not gotten off the focus regarding Las Vegas. I know this pandemic issue takes center stage, but also there is the infrastructure bill making its way through Congress, which has an impact. And as I understand it, the A's architect is still, fooling around with some kind of design, right? And if the A's do decide to pull the trigger on Las Vegas, it will be at the behest of Major League Baseball, all right? Now, I hope and pray that Major League Baseball gives a green light to the A's to stay in Oakland and in this stuff. That would be fantastic. It would be the culmination of a lot of hard work, a lot of angry feelings, but I also hope some lessons learned about how the city should conduct itself regarding completing big projects. Because if it does get to this point, it will be by the grace of God and in spite of the city's own incompetence. All right? You understand that, Mayor? Okay? In spite of the city's own incompetence. And look, I had a guest tell me, Misty Cross, yesterday on my show, that the mayor said to her, well, she's just sort of counting days before she's out of here. Libby, don't let stuff like that get around. Stop saying that. Focus on the job of being mayor until you're not mayor anymore. That's not a good look, because then it means that you're not really focused on making the city the kind of city that we all want it to be, and we know it can be, especially during these hard times for everybody. All right, so come on, Libby, toot sweet. Let's go. Let's get out here. Let's get it done. All right, folks. There is your summary, And I will be back with more on this later today. Subscribe to Zenny62, bookmark oaklandnewsnow.com. And by the way, this is the Star Trek Centennial. That's right. Gene Roddenberry would have been 100 years old today. Live long and prosper in your world. And thanks, Sean. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you.